Hi, David.
Hi, Karat.
What risk management standards are currently used, if you can tell us?
This is a very interesting question. I've been involved in standards development for maybe 20 years, and there are a lot of risk management standards. Now, that's quite strange. You would think there is a single standard. And I don't know if you know the history of the word standard. It's quite interesting. In English, the standard is a flag. And the flag was used during battle, and it was flown where the king was, or where the leader of the army was. And so they put the flag here to say, this is where the center of our army is, where the leader of our army is. And when there's a battle going on, and there's lots of confusion, and there's smoke and screaming, and people running about, you need to know where to rally the troops. And the troops rally to the standard. And if you have more than one standard, it doesn't help in the heat of battle when there's a lot of confusion. Where do you run to?
Yes.
And so we are in the position in risk management where we have something like 18 or 20 standards. So the question is, when there's confusion and conflict, where do you run?
Yes.
Which standard do you run to?
Yes.
There should be one standard. Now, we've moved towards that with the ISO organization, the International Standards Organization.
Yes.
And in 2009, they published ISO 31000, which is risk management principles and guidelines. And in risk management principles and guidelines, there are 11 principles. There is a framework for risk management. There's a generic process for risk management. There are definitions that support risk management. And then there's a whole set of appendices which give useful information to support you. And so ISO 31000 claims to be the standard that we should all run to, and I think there's probably some truth in that. It's quite short, quite overarching, quite generic, and you can apply it in all different settings. And the ISO 31000 is currently being updated with the release expected in 2018. So ISO 31000 is probably the one standard overarching, but it's so generic that it needs some kind of tailoring or instantiation, making specific to different settings. So I have here a list of standards. There are this many standards that I'm aware of, and there are others. So you see, I've started to make another list below here of different standards that we could refer to. And certainly within different settings, you might want to refer to a financial risk standard, or an environmental risk standard, or a project risk standard. In the UK, we have a particular standard produced by the UK government. It's called Management of Risk, MOR, and it's a very powerful set of guidelines. There's a principles document and a guidelines document, guidelines for practitioners, and you can certify as an MOR practitioner or an MOR expert. And it's the way that the UK government manages risk in all of its government projects.
And when you say government, exactly which body are you referring to? Which governmental body?
The Cabinet. It comes from the Cabinet Office.
Okay. All right.
So originally there was an Office of Government Commerce, OGC, and that's been absorbed recently into the Cabinet Office because there's a recognition that risk management is one of the responsibilities of government. And we talked in an earlier question about national risk, to say that in the UK we have a national risk register maintained by the UK government, by the Cabinet Office, which lists the top 20 risks to the nation. And that's published on the government websites and so on. So you have that. You would have the Institution of Civil Engineers, which has its own risk management standards. RAMP, it's called, Risk Analysis and Management of Projects. Which is a very well-defined standard now in its third edition, and it's specific to application of risk management in civil engineering. The Project Management Institute has a risk management standard for projects. It's a practice standard for management of risk in projects. So all of these are applications in specific areas. So I think when we're referring to standards, we should use them to validate our approach and to guide our approach, but recognize that we should always be tailoring that approach to what fits for our organization. And the interesting thing is that even with ISO 31000, you can't certify against it. It's very carefully positioned as risk management principles and guidelines. And so it's not a certification standard like ISO 9001, for example, for quality management. It is a guideline which you are then expected to tailor for your own particular application. So many flags on the battlefield. You could choose which one to run to for your particular application. I would recommend that we raise the 31,000 flag higher than the others and start to run to that, but still recognise it's only guidelines that need to be tailored.
Thank you so much, David.
It's a pleasure.